Before we begin, I need you to know something. This story isn't easy to hear. It's raw. It's painful. It's about the darkest moment of my life. The moment I almost lost everything, including myself. But I'm sharing it because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear it. Someone who's struggling with their body. Someone who's being told they're not enough. Someone who's slowly disappearing, trying to become acceptable to people who will never be satisfied. That's you, please stay. This story is for you. And if you've ever made someone feel small because of their body, even accidentally, even with good intentions, I need you to stay too. Because words have weight. And it's time we all understood that. What you're about to hear is true. It's my story. And I'm telling it because silence protects no one. If this resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps this message reach the people who need it most. Now let me take you back to where it all began. They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Mine was the day I signed my death sentence. I'm not speaking in metaphors. I mean it literally. The day I walked down that aisle in a dress that didn't quite fit right, toward a man whose eyes kept drifting to the bridesmaids. That was the day I began dying from the inside out. But let me start from the beginning. Before the dying. Before the darkness. When I was still just me. My name is Sarah. And I was never the pretty girl. I know that sounds harsh, but it's what I learned to believe. Not because I wasn't beautiful, I know that now, but because the world spent my entire childhood teaching me that my body was something to apologize for. Something to hide. Something wrong. I was 8 years old the first time someone called me fat. It was a boy in my class, Jeremy Collins, and we were choosing teams for dodgeball. When I stepped forward hoping to be picked, he laughed. Actually laughed. And said, "No way. She'll break the floor." Everyone laughed. Even the teacher smiled. That uncomfortable smile adults give when they don't want to deal with the cruelty happening right in front of them. That's when I learned that my body wasn't just mine. It belonged to everyone else too. To their opinions. Their judgments. Their cruel, careless words that they threw around like they cost nothing. But words have weight. And I carried every single one. By the time I was 12, I had learned all the rules. Don't wear horizontal stripes. Don't eat in front of boys. Don't raise your hand too much or people will notice you. Don't take up space. Don't exist too loudly. My mother tried to help in her own way. "You have such a pretty face," she'd say, which I learned was code for, "If only the rest of you matched." She'd buy me diet books for my birthday. She'd suggest we go for walks together. Her voice gentle but her meaning clear. "You need to fix this." Even my father, who I thought loved me unconditionally, would pat my stomach playfully and say, "Getting a little pudgy there, kiddo." He thought it was innocent. Teasing. But every pat felt like a verdict. "You're failing." By the time I was 16, I had learned to make myself smaller in every way except physically. I stopped raising my hand in class. Stopped wearing bright colors. Stopped going to school dances. Stopped dating. Stopped believing that someone could want me. I folded myself into corners, hoping that if I was quiet enough, invisible enough, maybe they'd forget about my body. But you can't disappear when your body is the thing they won't let you forget. Then I met Marcus. I was 23, working at a small independent bookstore that smelled like vanilla and old paper and possibility. It was my sanctuary, the one place where I felt like I mattered because of what was in my mind, not what was written on my body. It was a Tuesday afternoon, slow and golden, when he walked in. He was tall, with dark hair and kind eyes and a smile that felt like sunrise after a long night. He wore a navy sweater and carried himself with this quiet confidence that made me both nervous and curious. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the counter where I was organizing new releases. "I'm looking for a gift for my mother. She loves mysteries, but I don't know where to start." I could have just pointed him to the mystery section. That would have been enough. But something about the way he asked, genuinely interested, not dismissive, made me want to help. "What kind of mysteries does she like? Cozy? Psychological thrillers? Police procedurals?" His face lit up. "I have no idea what any of those mean, but I'm intrigued." We talked for an hour. I showed him different books, explained the subgenres, told him about my favorites. He asked questions. Real questions. He listened like my words had weight, like my opinions mattered. "You really love books," he observed, and there was no mockery in his voice. Just appreciation. "They're easier than people," I said without thinking, then immediately regretted it. Too honest. Too vulnerable. But he didn't laugh. He nodded slowly. "I get that. People are complicated. He bought 3 books for his mother and asked if he could come back for more recommendations. I said yes, assuming he was just being polite. But he came back. The next week, and the week after that, we started talking about more than books. About dreams, about childhood, about the ways we both felt like outsiders. He told me he'd been bullied too, for being too quiet, too sensitive, for liking art instead of sports. People are cruel to what they don't understand, he said. And for the first time in my life I felt seen. After 6 weeks of his visits, he finally asked me to dinner. I almost said no. Almost convinced myself that he couldn't possibly be interested, that this was pity, that I'd embarrass myself. But something in me, some tiny spark of hope I tried so hard to extinguish, whispered, "What if?" That dinner changed everything. He picked me up at 7, held the car door open, complimented my dress. A simple blue dress I'd agonized over for hours. We went to a small Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and candles that made everything feel softer. And he looked at me, really looked at me, not through me, not past me, at me. "I have to be honest," he said over pasta. "I've been coming to that bookstore for weeks trying to work up the courage to ask you out." "Courage?" I repeated, certain I'd misheard. "You're intimidating," he said with a shy smile. "You're so smart and passionate and beautiful, and I kept thinking you'd probably say no." Beautiful. He called me beautiful. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. We dated for 2 years. He told me I was beautiful at least once a day. He held my hand in public. He introduced me to his friends without shame or hesitation. He kissed me like I was precious. He made love to me like my body was a miracle. And slowly, so slowly, I began to believe that maybe I was worth loving. Maybe all those years of self-hatred had been based on lies. Maybe I had been wrong all along. Maybe I was enough. His proposal was simple. No grand gesture with photographers and crowds. Just him and me on my couch on a rainy Sunday, eating Chinese takeout straight from the containers, and he turned to me with sweet and sour sauce on his chin and said, "I don't want to do life without you." I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Yes through tears. Yes through disbelief. Yes through the overwhelming feeling that finally I was chosen. The wedding planning was when things started to change. Subtle things at first. Little comments that felt like paper cuts, small but stinging, easy to ignore individually, but they accumulated. "Do you think you'll lose weight before the wedding?" his mother asked one afternoon over tea in her pristine living room. Her voice was sweet as poison, wrapped in concern. "You'll want to look your best in the photos. They're forever, you know." Marcus laughed it off. "Mom, she's perfect as she is." But I noticed he didn't look at me when he said it. And he didn't tell her to stop. Then came the dress shopping. I had been dreading it for weeks, and it turned out my dread was justified. My mother, his mother, my 2 bridesmaids, all crowding into that brightly lit bridal boutique with its mirrors and champagne and false cheer. The consultant kept bringing dresses in larger sizes than I told her, her smile fixed and professional. "Let's try this one," she'd say, holding up another white gown. "It's very forgiving through the middle." Forgiving. As if my body was a sin that needed absolution. I tried on dress after dress, each fitting room session feeling more like a trial than a celebration. They'd all stand there, heads tilted, examining me like I was a house they were considering buying, but weren't quite sold on. Maybe something with more support. "Have you considered shapewear?" My friend wore 2 layers under her dress. "The empire waist is very flattering for your shape." Your shape. Never this shape. Always your shape. Like it was uniquely problematic. I found a dress I loved. It had lace sleeves and a flowing skirt and made me feel, for just a moment, like a princess. Like I was allowed to be beautiful. "It's lovely," my mother said with that particular tone that meant but. "Very romantic," his mother added. "Though have you considered something more structured? For you know." I knew. Marcus told me I looked beautiful when I showed him the picture. But his eyes said something else. They said, "I guess that's fine." The comments continued through the months of planning. About my arms in the dress. About whether I'd be able to dance without sweating. About the menu. Should we have a lighter option for the reception? Each comment was a drop of poison. Individually harmless. Together lethal. The wedding itself was a blur. 250 people watching as I walked down an aisle that felt like walking through judgment. I remember feeling like I was performing rather than participating. Smiling for the camera at the exact right angle. Sucking in my stomach until my ribs ached. Adjusting the dress that suddenly felt like a costume, Like I was playing the role of bride rather than being one. Marcus's vows were beautiful. He promised to love me forever, to stand by my side through better or worse, to be my partner in everything. But there was one vow he didn't make. One promise he never spoke aloud. He didn't promise to defend me. And God, how I would need defending. The reception was 4 hours of feeling exposed. Of being hugged by relatives who would whisper, "You look so pretty," with surprise in their voices. Of being photographed from every angle. Knowing I'd spend hours later analyzing each photo, finding flaws. Our first dance was beautiful. Marcus held me close and whispered, "We did it." And for that moment I felt safe. But I should have paid attention to the things he didn't say. He didn't say, "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen." He didn't say, "I'm the luckiest man alive." He just said, "We did it." Like our marriage was a task he'd completed rather than a joy he was embracing. The first 6 months of marriage were fine. Fine is such a dangerous word. Because fine means you're settling. Fine means you're accepting less than you deserve. Fine means you're slowly dying but the water isn't boiling yet. We moved into a small apartment downtown. Merged our books and our furniture in our lives. On paper, everything looked perfect. Happy couple. Good jobs. A future stretching ahead. But perfect on paper doesn't mean perfect in reality. Marcus started working later. Coming home at 8, then 9, then 10 at night. Always exhausted. Always stressed. Always with excuses that sounded reasonable until you added them all up and realized they were a wall he was building between us. "It's not you," he'd say when I'd ask if everything was okay. "Work is just crazy right now. Big project. You understand." I understood. Of course I understood. I was always so understanding. When I dress up for him, wear lingerie, light candles, make his favorite dinner, he'd barely notice. "Oh, that's nice, babe. I'm just exhausted." When I tried to initiate intimacy, he'd be too tired, too stressed, too distracted. Our sex life went from passionate to perfunctory to nearly non-existent in the span of 6 months. And I started to notice the way he looked at other women. Not obviously. Not in a way I could call him out on. But I saw his eyes linger on the waitress at our favorite restaurant. On the woman jogging past us in the park. On actresses on TV with their perfect bodies and perfect faces. He'd look at them the way he used to look at me. With desire. With interest. With life in his eyes. Then he'd look at me and the light would dim. "It's not you," he'd say when I'd mention feeling distant. "I'm just stressed." But I knew. The way you know things in your bones even when your brain wants to deny them. I knew. I started trying to change. It began innocently enough. A gym membership. Some new workout clothes. "I just want to be healthier," I told myself. But healthy was a lie I told to cover the truth. I wanted to be smaller. Thinner. Different. Better. I tried everything. Keto diets that made me feel foggy and irritable. Paleo plans that had me eating the same thing for weeks. Intermittent fasting that left me dizzy at work. Juice cleanses that were just expensive forms of starvation. I counted every calorie like they were bullets aimed at my self-worth. I exercised until my body screamed. I weighed myself every morning, and let the number on the scale determine whether I was allowed to feel good about myself that day. 2 pounds down? Good day. 1 pound up? Terrible day. Failure. Start over. I lost 15 pounds in 2 months. Marcus didn't notice. I lost 20 more. He still didn't notice. Or maybe he did notice and just didn't care enough to comment. I don't know which is worse. But his friends noticed. At a dinner party at his coworker's house, one of them, Dave, I think his name was, looked me up and down and said, "Dude, your wife is looking good. You better watch out or someone might steal her." Marcus forced a laugh. "Yeah, she's been working hard." Not, "I'm proud of her." Not, "She's always been beautiful." Not, "She's incredible." Just acknowledgement of my labor. Like I was a car he'd been restoring. A project he'd been working on. I felt something crack inside me that night. Some essential part of my self-worth that I'd been trying so hard to rebuild. Because I realized, it didn't matter how much weight I lost. It would never be enough. The problem wasn't my body. The problem was that he didn't love me. Maybe he never had. The night everything shattered, we were at his company's annual holiday party. I had bought a new dress. Red. Fitted. I'd spent an hour doing my makeup. Another hour on my hair. I'd lost 35 pounds by then. I was smaller than I'd been since high school. I felt beautiful. Marcus barely glanced at me when I came downstairs. "You ready?" That should have been my warning. The party was at a hotel ballroom downtown, all glass and glitter and people dressed in their best costumes of success. I tried to be charming, funny, engaging. I laughed at the right jokes. I asked interested questions about projects I didn't understand, but Marcus kept drifting away, talking to colleagues, laughing with his boss, leaving me standing alone by the hors d'oeuvres table like wallpaper, like furniture, like nothing. I went to find the bathroom around 9:30, needing a break from pretending everything was fine. That's when I heard them, Marcus and 3 of his coworkers standing just around the corner by the bar. They didn't know I was there, just out of sight behind a pillar. "So when are you gonna upgrade, man?" one of them joked, and I heard the clink of glasses, the looseness of too much alcohol. Upgrade. Like I was a phone, a car, a thing to be replaced with a newer model. I should have walked away, should have plugged my ears, should have protected myself from what came next. But I stood frozen listening to my marriage die. Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. Trust me, I think about it. The words hit me like a physical blow. My lungs forgot how to work. The room spun. Another voice. "I mean, she's nice and all, but you could do better, bro. You're a good-looking guy. You could get someone really hot." "Yeah," Marcus said, and I heard the whine in his voice, the looseness of honesty that alcohol brings. "I thought she'd lose more weight after we got married. She talks about it constantly, but I don't know. It's like she's not really trying." I wasn't trying. I who had skipped meals until I felt dizzy. I who had exercised until my body screamed. I who had hated myself so thoroughly that I couldn't look at mirrors anymore. I who had turned my entire existence into a campaign to become worthy of his love. I wasn't trying. "Maybe suggest a personal trainer," someone offered. "I've tried," Marcus said, and I could hear him swirling his drink. "She gets defensive. It's a sensitive topic." Sensitive. Of course. I was the problem. My sensitivity. My defensiveness. Not his cruelty. Not his disgust. Not his complete lack of love for who I actually was. I heard them move away, heading back to the party laughing about something else. I stayed behind that pillar for 10 minutes trying to remember how to breathe. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. The words were lodged in my throat like shards of glass, cutting me from the inside. I found my coat and left. Just walked out of the party without telling anyone, without saying goodbye. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. When I got home, I stood in our bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Too thin, hollow-cheeked, eyes dead. I had been trying to disappear, and I was succeeding. That's when something broke in me. Not broke like shattering, broke like a dam breaking. Like everything I'd been holding back came flooding out. I stopped eating. Not consciously at first. I just couldn't. Food tasted like ash. My stomach rejected everything. The thought of putting anything in my body made me feel sick. Marcus came home at 2 a.m., drunk and apologetic for leaving me at the party. "Where did you go, babe?" "I was looking for you." "Liar." "I wasn't feeling well," I said. He kissed my forehead, tasting like whiskey. "Get some rest." He fell asleep in minutes, snoring softly beside me. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, feeling myself fade. The next few weeks were a blur of nothing. I went to work, came home, existed in the spaces between. I became a ghost in my own home, floating through rooms hollow and empty. I stopped weighing myself because the numbers didn't matter anymore. I stopped looking in mirrors because I couldn't bear to see what I was becoming. I stopped feeling anything except this vast, echoing emptiness. Marcus didn't notice. Not for days. Not until I collapsed in the kitchen on a Thursday morning, reaching for a glass of water and finding that my legs just stopped working. He found me on the floor, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. "Sarah? Sarah, what's wrong?" "Oh God, Sarah, talk to me. What's wrong? What's wrong?" Everything. Everything was wrong. He called 911. Rode with me in the ambulance. Held my hand while I faded in and out of consciousness. "Stay with me," he kept saying. "Please stay with me." But I'd been trying to stay for months, years, and he'd never noticed I was leaving. The hospital lights were too bright. Everything was too bright and too loud and too real. The doctor was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and gentle hands. She ran tests, took my blood, asked questions in a soft voice. "Sarah, can you tell me when you last had a full meal?" I couldn't remember. "Days? Weeks? You're severely malnourished," she said, not unkindly. Your body is shutting down. Your heart, your kidneys, everything is struggling. Marcus sat beside my bed, looking like he might shatter. But she's been eating. I see her eat. Small amounts, I whispered. Just enough. Just enough for what? He asked. Just enough to not die. Just enough to shrink. Just enough to become someone you could love. But I didn't say that. I just closed my eyes. They kept me in the hospital for 5 days. Fed me through and for. Monitored my heart. Introduced me to a therapist who specialized in eating disorders. This isn't about food, Dr. Chun told me on day 3. She was younger than I expected, with short black hair and a direct way of speaking that I appreciated. This is about control. About trying to make yourself acceptable to someone. My husband, I said. Tell me about him. So I did. I told her everything. About the comments during wedding planning. About the party. About the overheard conversation. About the way he looked at other women. About trying so hard to be enough and never succeeding. She listened without judgment, just nodding occasionally, taking notes. Sarah, she said when I finished, if your best friend told you her husband treated her this way, what would you tell her to do? I would tell her to leave. I would tell her she deserves better. I would tell her that love shouldn't feel like a performance evaluation. I would tell her that a man who makes you want to disappear doesn't deserve you. So why aren't you taking your own advice? Dr. Chun asked gently. 'Cause I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid that maybe Marcus was right, that I wasn't enough, that I needed to be smaller, prettier, better to deserve love. Afraid that if I left, no one else would ever want me. What would you tell your 8-year-old self? She asked. The little girl who got called fat on the playground? And suddenly I was crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place I'd locked away for decades. The kind of crying that hurts, that empties you out, that breaks you open. I would tell her she's perfect. I would tell her those kids were wrong. I would tell her that her body is a miracle, not a mistake. I would tell her she deserves to take up space. I would tell her she's loved. Then tell yourself that now, Dr. Chun said, handing me tissues. Because you're still her. And she's still waiting for someone to defend her. Marcus visited every day. Brought flowers. Held my hand. Cried and apologized and promised he'd be better. I love you, he said over and over. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was an idiot. Please, Sarah. Please give me another chance. And part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to go back to the life we'd built, pretend none of this happened, try again. But the bigger part of me, the part that had almost died, knew better. You called me an upgrade, I said quietly on his 4th visit. You said I wasn't trying. The color drained from his face. You heard that? Yes. Sarah, I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Those guys were just talking trash and You meant it, I interrupted. Maybe you didn't mean for me to hear it. But you meant it. Because you think it. Every day. Every time you look at me and wish I was someone else. That's not. It is. My voice was still quiet, but there was steel in it now. And I can't spend the rest of my life trying to become the person you wish you'd married. He tried to argue. Tried to convince me I was wrong, that I'd misunderstood, that he loved me exactly as I was. But you can't misunderstand disgust. You can't misinterpret disappointment. And you can't unhear the truth spoken when someone thinks you're not listening. I filed for divorce 3 weeks after leaving the hospital. Marcus begged me to reconsider. Promised he'd go to therapy. Promised he'd change. Promised he'd love me the way I deserved. But I'd heard enough promises. What I needed was someone who didn't have to promise to love my body. Someone who just did. And maybe that person was me. The divorce took 8 months. 8 months of lawyers and paperwork and dividing up the life we'd built. He got the apartment. I got the books and enough money to start over. My mother asked if I was sure. Marriage is work, she said. Everyone struggles. But there's a difference between struggling together and struggling to exist. There's a difference between growth and self-destruction. I was sure. Recovery wasn't linear. Dr. Chun had warned me it wouldn't be. There were days I still heard Marcus's voice in my head. Days I still looked in the mirror and saw all my perceived flaws instead of my strength. Days I wanted to skip meals, to shrink, to disappear. But I didn't. Or when I did, I'd call Dr. Chun. Or my new friend Rachel from the support group. Or my sister, who I'd reconnected with after years of distance. I started eating again. Really eating. Not to lose weight. Not to punish myself. But because food was fuel and joy and connection. I learned to cook. to savor flavors, to eat without guilt. I started moving my body because it felt good, not because I was trying to shrink it. Yoga classes where the instructor talked about strength and breath instead of calories. Walks in the park just to watch the seasons change. I started wearing clothes that made me happy. Bright colors, comfortable fabrics, clothes that fit the body I had, not the body I thought I should have. I started therapy, real consistent therapy where we unpack decades of shame and learn to build something new in its place. And most importantly, I started defending that little 8-year-old girl. The one who'd spent her whole life believing she was too much, too big, too loud, too hungry, too alive. Turns out she was never too much. She was just surrounded by people who were too small. 2 years after my divorce, I'm sitting in that same bookstore where I met Marcus. But everything is different now. I'm wearing a yellow dress. Bright, bold, unapologetic yellow. The kind of color I never would have worn before because I thought it would draw attention. Now I want attention. I want to be seen. My hair is in a messy bun. I'm eating a croissant from the cafe next door, letting crumbs fall on my book without anxiety. I'm reading for pleasure, not escape. And I'm smiling. A woman walks in with her daughter, maybe 7 or 8 years old. The little girl is wearing a pink tutu over jeans, her belly round and soft and perfect. She's skipping, completely unself-conscious, completely free. "Mommy, I'm hungry," she announces loudly. "I know, baby. We'll get you something right after we find Grandma's book." But the little girl has stopped skipping. She's looking at me, to my croissant. I smile at her. "Would you like a piece?" Her eyes widen. "Really? Really?" I break off a generous piece and hand it to her. Her mother starts to protest. "Oh, you don't have to." "It's okay," I say gently. "I have plenty." The little girl takes the croissant with both hands, reverent, like it's treasure. "Thank you," she says through a mouthful of pastry, crumbs already on her cheek. As they walk away to browse the shelves, I hear the little girl whisper, "Mommy, that lady was pretty." Yes, she was, her mother agrees. And I believe it. Not because I've lost weight. I haven't. I've actually gained some back. And my body has found its natural shape, soft and strong in mine. I believe it because pretty isn't a size. Pretty isn't a number on a scale. Pretty isn't whether someone else approves of your body. Pretty is joy. Pretty is kindness. Pretty is generosity. Pretty is taking up space without apology. Pretty is being alive. I'm Sarah. And I'm no longer dying. Not from body shaming. Not from trying to be smaller. Not from believing I'm not enough. I'm living. Finally, fully, unapologetically living. And if you're listening to this and you see yourself in my story, if you've ever been made to feel like your body is something to apologize for, I need you to hear this. You are not a before picture. You are not a project. You are not an upgrade waiting to happen. You are not too much. You are a complete, whole, beautiful human being exactly as you are. Right now. In this moment. In this body. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise doesn't deserve access to your heart. I almost died from body shaming. Not because of my weight, but because I believed the lie that my body determined my worth. That I needed to earn love through suffering. That I needed to shrink to matter. But I'm still here. Still breathing. Still taking up space. And I'm never making myself small again. The bookstore owner, Mrs. Chun, no relation to my therapist, comes over to my table. "Another coffee, dear?" "Yes, please," I say. "And another croissant." She smiles. "Coming right up." I pull out my journal, something Dr. Chun suggested I keep, and I write, "Today I gave a little girl a piece of my croissant. She said I was pretty. I believed her. This is what healing looks like. Small moments. Small kindnesses. Small truths that build into something bigger. I am enough. I have always been enough. And anyone who can't see that isn't looking at the right things." I close the journal and look out the window at the street beyond, at the people passing by in all their different shapes and sizes and colors. We're all just trying to exist in bodies that the world has opinions about. All trying to take up our rightful space in a culture that profits from our shame. But I'm done being ashamed. I'm done being small. I'm done dying to be loved. I'm living now. And living is the best revenge. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. I know it wasn't easy. If my story touched something in you, whether it brought up memories, tears, or recognition, please know that you're not alone. Millions of people are fighting this same battle every single day. The battle to exist in their bodies without shame. The battle to take up space without apology. Here's what I need you to do. If you're struggling with body image, disordered eating, or being in a relationship where you're made to feel less than, please reach out. Talk to someone, a therapist, a friend, a helpline. Don't wait until you're in a hospital bed like I was. Your life is worth fighting for. Your body is worth defending. You are worth loving exactly as you are. If you know someone who's struggling, say something. Not about their weight, not about their appearance. Just tell them you see them. You value them. You love them for who they are, not what they look like. And if you've ever made someone feel small, even unintentionally, it's not too late to do better. We all have the power to change the narrative, to choose kindness, to choose acceptance, to choose love. Before you go, if this story meant something to you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story that might change your life or help you change someone else's. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it's the lifeline they've been searching for. Leave a comment below. Tell me your story or just let me know you were here. This community is built on courage and honesty, and your voice matters. And remember, you are not a before picture. You are not a project. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. I'm Sarah, and I'm still here, still fighting, still taking up space. And I hope you will be too.